The U.S. issues a travel advisory urging all Americans to leave Iraq immediately.
And this comes after a U.S. airstrike killed a top-ranking Iranian general in Iraq. Political science professor Ric Epps is here with more on this. First of all, good morning to you.
Good morning. Good to see you.
Can we talk about this travel advisory first? Because now they're saying, you know, if you're American, get out of Iraq. Do not go to the embassy. No. How serious is this travel advisory?
Oh, quite serious, and it should be taken in that fashion. The reprisals that could arise from this could happen immediately in a sort of regional context, and so the threat there is imminent because of the ties that Iran has now reached into Iraq. So it's important that we get those individuals who work for foreign companies and those who work in the embassy out relatively quickly.
As people are waking up more and more to this news, this airstrike targeted a very important person in the military, General Soleimani.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about his role and what he was doing. It was not only with Iraq, with Syria, with Lebanon, with the whole region.
Yeah. Well, he has been like the major military link point in terms of spreading Iran's influence militarily, but also even in a sort of foreign policy aspect, has been to expand its reach throughout the region, to Syria, to Lebanon, to Yemen, into some other areas, and into Iraq, to be able to further basically create a shield for Iran itself and to enhance its influence. Hence, you know, Hezbollah's ties to Hezbollah and other areas. So he's been the major figure in that, and he's also been seen more recently in the last few years spending time with Ayatollah Khomeini and some of the top leaders, so his influence has grown incrementally, and particularly since the United States torpedoed the Iran nuclear deal, his presence and rise has even had greater escalation.
Why now?
Well, there's been some of the allegations. I will say allegations. I'm not going to say they're factual information that Iran was possibly, you know, preparing to target American diplomats and other people, high-level figures, was going to create more havoc in the region, you know, and so this was the reason why they say that they justify committing actions to remove him.
Oh well, I was just, keep going. Go ahead.
No, well, so part of in that, you know, there's, you know, let's say for the moment if it's true, and the guy is a bad guy, Soleimani was a bad guy. Does that mean that we eliminate him? You know, and there may be some justification to support that determination. The question becomes, you know, what are the consequences for those actions? You know, and how well thought out were the consequences for those actions? Because it's going to have consequences, short-term and long-term, that we're going to have to. We're not going to like very much.
Well, it's a good thing that you bring that up, because now that Soleimani has been killed, Iran's supreme leader is vowing vengeance, saying, quote, harsh retaliation is waiting. So when he says retaliation, what are we now expecting?
Well, again, there will never be a direct warfare scenario, right? We're not talking about the U.S. forces versus Iranian forces. That's not the game that it would be played. That's a game they can't win. We have way too much technology for all that. What we're talking about really is what we call asymmetric warfare, or you could call it a war of attrition. You know, this is where terrorism comes in, where you can start to destabilize the region. And when I mentioned earlier about consequences, you know, the Gulf of Hormuz, which is where 25% of the world's oil comes through daily, you're talking about could be a devastating effect to the global economy as a result of just this action. If they are able to do that, then you've got a major problem globally. So it doesn't just affect us, it affects the rest of the world. And then also you're talking about the reality of change. So Soleimani's gone. Then the question is, who replaces Soleimani, right? And then let's go one step further. Now that you've upset the status quo in Iran, then that puts pressure on the leader, for the next leader to be more radical. And that typically happens in Iran. When there's a imminent threat, they will go get a more hawkish leader to then take over And then you've got a bigger problem. So then you have this escalation. We call it a security dilemma that escalates out of control.
Right, but Rick, all this is also happening at a time where within Iran internally with the people, things are so fragile there. We just saw a few weeks ago the riots starting over there over gas prices. So I probably, and we know this, there's a lot of things happening behind the scenes that we don't know about, but we do know we need to keep our eyes on what's happening over there, because as they said, the threats that are coming back and saying retaliation, and now the warning for anybody in that area to get out needs to be taken seriously.
Yeah, and then what happens internally, because if you really want to have political change in Iran, it starts from the inside out, not from the outside in. And then by radicalizing, by squeezing them, the people don't understand what's really going on, the bigger picture of why it's happening. They just realize, I don't have food today.
Sure.
So then you're looking at, well, why am I not having food? Well, the United States is why I don't have food, and that's their mindset. And so you can start to create tomorrow's problem today because of the policy actions you commit. So it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out over the next
Very interesting what's going to happen over the next few weeks. All right, Ric Epps, thank you for being here. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.